Hello everybody, welcome back. In this video, we shall build the first part of our pen platformer game, right? Uh, Recall pen platformer is basically like a platformer game where pen block is used to draw different components, right? So for example, as our player moves from one level to another, it hits into multiple obstacles, it finds a different kind of arena, and we will use pen block to do all of that. And in this purpose, we will be using the blocks that we have created previously under the section of my blocks to help us with the first part of the pen platformer, right? So let's get started, right? I just want to show you what we are building. Now remember, this is just the first part, so we are only drawing the arena. We're just getting familiarity with the concepts of how do we use draw, how do you use the pen block to draw the different arenas. So right now I've got a very simple game. I've got a pseudo player. It's not really a player because it doesn't really have any rules, but only thing I've got is that it moves, right? And once it reaches the right corner, it goes into the next level, and you notice I get some more obstacles coming its way, and these obstacles have all been drawn, right? So using the blocks that we have created, we'll draw these. Right now it just lets them go through it. Later on we'll expand this game to make sure that this player jumps over these obstacles, for example, and so on. Right now it just goes to the third level, so this is level 3 now, and I've got some kind of steps that it must follow and so on. And then once I cross, let's say, the next level, I get some more fancy things, right? So I've created 4 levels, but clearly this whole thing is endless. One can use their imagination to create different kind of obstacles, different kind of platforms, different kind of arenas, let's say, to what where the player might play, and depending on what you want out of the game, right? So there's like endless possibilities here. But here we will see how we will use the blocks that we have created previously under my blocks to get this effect, right? So recall previously we had created two functions, two blocks. One was to draw a line, and then on top of that we had created a function to draw a rectangle, right? So we will just use start from here and sort of get moving with doing something like that, right? Something like what we had done in the other code that I just showed you. So first thing first, let me just erase all of this, right? So we will start with a basic level. Recall my game here is also starting with a very basic level where we just have a player and just one rectangle, right? So let's start with that, right? So what I will do is that I will define a variable called level to keep track of how many, or rather which level I am in, right? So I'll call a variable called, let's say I create a variable called level, right? And let it be for all sprites. We'll see this why. So I will, when the game starts, I will set level to 1, implying that I am in level 1, right? Then of course I'll erase everything, maybe set pen size to 8. I can do pen up, right? And then I will broadcast a message called, I'll remove all of this, right? Maybe except the hide. I can I can keep hide here, but I can remove all of this, and I can just basically broadcast a message called, so I go to events, I go say broadcast a message called, new message called level, oops, sorry, new message called level 1, right? So implying that I'm in level 1, and then I can just hide. So remember, broadcast is never complete till I complete this broadcast by saying when I receive message 1, right? So I'll go and say when I receive, for example, in this case, level 1, right? Now, all of this I'm putting in the so-called creator sprite because I want creator sprite to create the different arenas for me, right? So I say when I receive level 1, maybe I can set the pen color to perhaps say blue color, right? I'll change this to, let's say, blue. I mean, again, this is not necessary that must be blue, but say I want to make it blue color. uh, and then I am going to draw a rectangle somewhere in this corner, right? So specifically I want to go to this point, right? I want to go to this point and draw a rectangle which kind of covers the entire arena from left to right, right? So recall I had a function, I had a block called draw rectangle, which was of course making use of draw line, but I am going to use that block to say draw rectangle at, right? Draw rectangle at, let's say I will put it at, say, something like minus 235. That's the x naught, so it's somewhere here. And let's say minus 170. So that's really coming down to somewhere in this corner, minus 235, minus 170. And I want this rectangle to be large enough to be, covering this entire arena, right? So it's basically its length should be something like, say, 470, right? How do I get this 470? Well, I just say 235 times 2, so that it's 235 this side and 235 that side. And I know this will cover the almost the entire screen, right? So that's sufficient for me. So length 470 and height perhaps I can give maybe something like, say, 40 or 45 or something. So I'll give, say, 40, right? Now, if I did this, what happens is, you notice that my first level is effectively created. There's not much difficulty because I already had this block called draw rectangle, which draws a rectangle wherever I want. So I call it with these inputs and I get my first level done, right? Now what I'll do is to create a hero sprite, right? Now it turns out there is some, well, in a lot of pen platformers, even the player is drawn using a pen sprite, using, the pen blocks, but we shall take a little liberal route. We will say, let's create a hero sprite because it, keeps things somewhat simpler. So I don't want to add a sprite, but maybe I can just say paint a sprite, and probably I can just make a small square here, and let's give it some different color. Probably let's give it a color of, let's say red color, right? I mean, doesn't matter, but just something to go with, right? So I'll make the sprite and I'll probably put it like this here, right? And I can maybe change its size to something like, say, 80 or something, right? Yeah, so it becomes nice. Now I am going to treat this as my player, so I call it player, let's say, right? And now I'm going to, make this player move, right? Recall, in when the game is fully completed, the player will jump, the player will have a gravity effect, which means it will fall down if it's not supported by the platform, and so on. But for now, I will give it extremely basic motion, such so that I can move from one level to another, right? So that's, remember, at this we are doing this in two parts. In this part, we are just building the arena, right? And we're just getting familiar with the hooks and nooks that we hooks and the tools that we have to build the arena, right? So I will give it some very simple code to make it move, right? So what I'll do is that I'll say, look, when flag is clicked, so when flag clicked, I will of course I will say show, right? And then I'll say, you know I just want it to move. For example, I want it to come somewhere here, so maybe I can just try dragging it and see what exposition looks nice, so then I'll know where to set it to. So probably something like, maybe around, let's say, here. So one minus 190 and minus 114 is fine, so I can say go to minus 190 and minus 114. Okay, uh, and then after that I will say, so I'll go to say something like minus 190, minus 114, and now I will put a block called, very familiar to you, forever. And all I want to do is to give code to my sprite so that it can move right when I click the right arrow, right? So, I mean, you guys have done this many times before. So I'll say if key, let's say, right arrow pressed, right? If key arrow pressed, I can say change, so in the motion block, I can say change x by, say, I can say 10, but it's better to use it as a variable so that we can control the speed, right? So instead of this, I'll go and create a variable called, say, x speed, right? So, once that happens, then I can basically say change x by x speed. And also in the when I have this when flag clicked, I can set this variable to something. So I'll say set, for example, x speed to maybe, say, 10, right? So then I'll get a situation where whenever I click the flag, right, when I click the flag and I click the right arrow, my x speed will be 10, and now I'm clicking the right arrow, you notice my sprite is going towards the right corner. Of course, there's no way for it to come back because I'm not told it anything, right? So right now I've got a flexibility, I've got a facility to move my sprite from left to right because I'm changing its x position by x speed, which is set to 10, right? Now, what I really want is that once my sprite reaches, let's say, this position, which is kind of far to the right, I want it to cross into the next level, right? So which means I want it to go to next level here, right? And for this purpose, I'm going to use a wait until block, and we'll see how, right? So I'll say, let's say I'll say when flag clicked, right? So when flag clicked, well, being a sensing block, I'll put it in forever because I want this test to be happening forever. And I'll say wait until, so do nothing, wait until, go to operators and say, let's say, x position is greater than, say, so in x position, I can say x position is greater than, say, something like maybe 240 or 230 is probably okay, right? So what this will do is that it will do nothing till the x position becomes more than 230, right? So once that happens, then I can say, I can put a control statement that if, let's say, my level is 1, okay, so if my, if the, let's say, the in the operators, I can go and put if, in my variables, if my level is equal to 1, then I can broadcast a message called level 2 and make level equal to 2. So how do I do that? Well, I go to events and I say broadcast, let's say, level, so new message, call it level 2, right? Call it level 2, and then I can just change my variable level to 2 so that I can keep track of what's going on, right? So I'll go to the variables and I set it to, basically I set level 2. I could also do change level by 1, but that's equivalent to saying set level to 2, right? So notice what this will do is that it will basically do nothing till the x position becomes, say, more than 230, and then once that happens, it will, change the level to 2. And also I want the sprite to kind of come back to wherever it was, right? So once this happens, I will set the sprite's x value to, let's say, something like minus maybe 200 or something like that, so that will come back to, say, somewhere here, right? Maybe I can even make it minus 210 or something. Yeah, so let's see how this thing works out, right? So when the game starts, remember my sprite comes here because of this statement, right? Now when I go right, nothing much is happening, but the moment I cross the 230 boundary, remember my sprite came back to minus 210, which is here, and my level has gone to 2, right? Of course, a broadcast message is also generated, but right now nothing happened because remember, broadcast is never complete until I have, when I receive level 2. And right now in this code, I do not have that part of the code, right? So now you might wonder, why did I not use when touching edge? Okay, why did I do this wait until x position is more than 230, right? The reason is because in this game, right, right now there's nothing, but when we do a proper platformer, there may be many edges that this sprite might touch, right? And some of them may not mean that you have crossed the level, right? So I really wanted to cross the level by saying that I have reached the end of the screen, right? So every level starts from the extreme left, and the when I click the flag, it starts from extreme left, then I must cross all of this with its obstacles till reaching this very edge, right? So whereas touching edge would have meant that I could have been touching any edge, and that might take me to the next level. So that's why I do not use touching edge here, right? Now, I have told that, look, I have got a level 1 code, but let's see what happens when I get a level 2, right? So in level 2, I could possibly add a few obstacles. So let's say I'll just copy this thing. I'll say duplicate this. And I say instead of level 1, when I receive level 2, right? So, well, first thing I can do is to erase everything, right? So that, it becomes clean. I say erase all, right? And then I'll say set pen color to blue. That's fine. And I'll just draw the same rectangle once again, because all I want in level 2, recall from here, it's not necessary, but this is all I'm saying, that all you want is that I just get these two obstacles getting created, right? So I'll do the same thing in my code. Again, it's up to you what you want to do in your code, but this is just examples for you, right? So you may want to do a totally different platform. That's perfectly fine, right? So what I'll do is I will say set the pen color now to, perhaps I can, make it black, right? So if I change the brightness and all of that to black, to 0, then the color becomes black, and then I can just create two rectangles which will become my obstacles, right? And I can recall this function is flexible, so I can now put them possibly at, let's say, something like in maybe minus 100 and minus 130, right? And I'll talk about this, how did I decide these numbers, but let me just put this, say little narrow and probably say of height longer than this, so maybe height of 100. And then once again I can put one at say 100 and 130. Now again there is nothing let's say mandatory about this that you must put it in these positions, but this is just my rendition of the game, and I'm putting it in this way. Okay, so how did I, however, choose minus 130? Remember, my first rectangle was starting at this corner, which was minus 235, minus 170. Now, its height is 40, which means that if I climb up 40 steps from this position, I would have reached minus 130, right? So I want this rectangle, the new rectangles to appear on top of this platform. That's why I chose the starting point y to be minus 130, not 130. Okay, so minus 130 and x value, I'm just putting them so that they come one here and one here, right? Again, there's nothing mandatory about this, just the way I have done it. Okay, now length and height, how did I decide? I want this to be quite narrow, so small length but somewhat tall. So maybe height could be 100, or maybe you can just make it 80. Doesn't matter. Again, you can in fact make them of unequal height if you want to, right? So because our function is extremely flexible, right? So if I did this, for instance, right now when I go to, so right now I'm in level 1. When I cross this boundary, I go to level 2 and immediately I have these two obstacles. Right now, of course, my sprite will just walk through it, but notice how nicely this obstacles have come. I can, let's say, just make them 100 and both of them 100. So in that case, I'll get I'll get these two coming out, and you can clearly see how flexible this is, right? I can move this rectangle somewhere else if I want to. I can change its shape, I can change its color, and hence I can create variety in my game, right? So again, once I reach the corner here, right, so notice in the player sprite, this wait until is inside a forever, right, which means it's always being checked, right? Now, which means that if I cross this boundary, I can use this condition once again. So notice what happened is it crossed the boundary and it came back to minus 210. That's because of this statement, right? But I also want the level to move up, right? So now my first thought would be, it's very simple. I would just put, if level is equal to 2, right? If level is equal to 2, okay, if level is equal to, broadcast, say, a message called level 3, right? Because level 2 must go to level 3, and I will change my level to say 3. Okay, now this looks correct, but in fact this is wrong. Okay, why is this wrong? Right, and don't trust me, you can try this code. This is wrong because what will happen, imagine the scenario. Okay, when level is 1, the moment x goes here, level will become 2, and now if I go and check if the level is 2, level will immediately become 3. So in effect, I will always skip level 2 in this code. So let's just try it once again so that we get convinced. So I go here and go back to my creator code, and I basically create duplicate of this, and I say when I receive level 3, right? So when I receive level 3, what I want to do is, say in level 3 I want to create, let's say, something like this, right? Again, there's no compulsion that you must do this, but I want to create, say, 3 steps of platforms, right? Again, you can create them in a zigzag manner, you can create them in a horizontal manner, whichever way you want, doesn't matter, right? But 3 steps I want to create, right? So I'm going to write some code here to do this, and once again I'll erase everything, set pen color to the green color, sorry, the blue color, and now I will start drawing my 3 rectangles using my blocks that I've created, right? Again, you'll see the value of function. The first one is probably okay at starting from this corner here. However, its length I will make a little bit less, say length of 120, so it doesn't go all the way out here. So 120, and height of 40. Then I'll try, say, something like minus 70 and minus 60, right? And then maybe again length of 120 and say height of 40, right? And then the third one should go even higher, so I'll even higher and even to the right side, so I'll say make it go to something like my, say, 90. Again, nothing mandatory about these, but it's just good to you know uh, just follow this, right? So notice I am keeping the height and the length the same for these, so they look identical, but they appear at different places, right? So let's see what happens. See this carefully. Okay, I told you there's a bug in this code with respect to this code, right? So we'll see this in a moment. And when I'm in level 1, I start this level 1. Once I reach this portion, notice I've immediately gone to level 3. Right? Why did that happen? As I mentioned, that happened because this code, even though it looks correct, but actually it's wrong. What happens is when the level is 1, I broadcast level 2 and the level gets set to 2. After that, I go and check if the level is 2 and I broadcast level 3, and hence the level gets to 3, right? So if I have this code, level 2 will never get activated because immediately level will go from 2 to 3 and I'll broadcast level 3, which will erase whatever level 2 did and write this, right? So in effect, it will only play level 1 and the last level, right? So to avoid this, I'm going to have to modify this code, and I'll do that now, right? So I intentionally do it wrong so that you kind of convince yourself that this is wrong, as I just showed you. Really, because level 1 changes to level 2, right? But the variable changes also, and hence it just jumps the gun, right? So what I can do instead is that instead of using just the if statement, I can use if then else and a combination of if then else and if, right? So here I go and say in the control block, I can say if then else. If let's say, okay, I take this entire condition. If level is equal to 1, then this remains same, right? Level, change level to 2. If level is not equal to 1, which means in the else condition, then I put if level is equal to 2, make, go broadcast level 3, right? So how will this help? This will help because remember when level was equal to 1, right? It will go, this if else is like a T junction, remember? So it will go into this part of the code and then get out. It will not get into the else portions, right? So it will set level is equal to 2 and get out of this entire loop till you again come back by hitting this condition here, wait until, right? So this will make sure that you get level 2 as well, as you can see. So now I have got my sprite, I move it across and I get level. Notice level is 2. That's because of this statement, and this time it will come back here, and now I will get the third level, right? And I've got these 3 rectangles created. Okay, now let's say I want to just extend this a little bit and I want to draw little bit more on this, which is a level 4. So once again in this I'll have to change my code to again make it an if then else, right? So if then else, so if let's say else, basically if level is equal to 2, I will say broadcast level 3, right? Notice this is again to avoid the mistake that I said. However, if the level is not equal to 2, then in here I can put, else I can go and put if level is equal to 3, right? The last one can be an if. So I can just say duplicate this part of the code, say if level is equal to 3, right? And I can say broadcast level, say level, okay, I have to create a new message, level 4 maybe, and and set level to 4. So this keeps me flexible. I can keep on adding more levels if I want to, but the important point is the structure of this loop. It's very important because what looks correct in the beginning, in the first class is not really correct. As we saw, it will skip one level, right? Or skip multiple levels, right? So here by doing if I am making sure that when the level is 1, only this condition is touched. If level is not equal to 1, then I come here, and if the level is 2, I touch only this portion, else I touch only this portion, and so on and so forth, right? So this if else is important here, right? Now when I get level 3 in the creator code, maybe level 4, sorry, I can go and create a little bit more code, right? So say one thing, I make it, say when I receive level 4, what can I do? Well, I can maybe make, as you notice here, I have made, when I go from here level 3 to level 4, I get these two square colors, and in my platformer later on, I can have a condition, when I touch red color, for example, something else happens, right? So, in the game that I was referring to, when I touch red color, it basically goes back to the beginning, right? So, and so on. So you can do so many things in this, right? So I want two rectangles to appear now, and once again, I'll show you the flexibility of our code. So I will say, like, set, first rectangle can be appearing there, but I will make it a little bit narrower. Instead of 120, I'll make it 60. And then I will, change the pen color to, let's say, I'll say set pen color, duplicate this portion. I'll say set pen color to maybe say red, right? And after this, once again, instead of minus 235, I can make this rectangle start at something like minus 1, say minus 175, right? So that will make sure I get, let's say, I can just run this much code and see what happens, right? So if I did this, I crossed into level 2, then I cross into level 3. Now I'm going to cross into level 4 and I get two rectangles like this. If I want, I can actually offset this a little bit, so I can maybe make it as minus 165 or something like that, right? So that I think will nicely make both the rectangles visible, but it doesn't really matter, right? It just depends on your game, right? So there's a little bit of gap created. You can fix this by changing this to say something like minus 168, right? uh, Again, it doesn't really matter, right? So in my code that I have there, in fact, they're just completely sticking to each other, right? So yeah, see, now it looks just nice. I've got two different rectangles. uh, Now I can just duplicate this three times around this entire code, and you will see that it's going to generate let's say, so next one I can put at probably minus 70, and maybe minus let's say, I can put it, let's say something like minus 70 and minus 60 probably here, right? So that it goes sort of up here, right? And again, I'll make height, length and height 60 60. And here probably I can put, instead of minus let's say I can put it at minus 2 or something like that, right? And let's just try how this looks. So I don't want the y to change. So once again, let's say if I were to go through this, then what happens is I'm getting a second rectangle, level 3 is here. Now I got two rectangles which look something like this, right? It's exactly like the previous one, and I can just go and create one more round to this so that I can get one more platform here, right? So I duplicate this again, and notice how flexible this has become, right? Because we have created this my blocks previously, right? So I'll go and create something at say 90, 50, but again, it depends on what you want to do. So maybe I can create the next one at say something like say maybe 158 or something like that, right? Let's just try how this looks. So I go to 158. So these are the xy coordinates. So I go to the xy coordinate of say 90, 158, and maybe the same y. So 158, 50 will be somewhere here, right? And I draw in a red color, right? So let's see what happens here. So I'll go to level 2, then I go to level 3. Of course, my sprite does nothing, and now I get a nice platform, right? And in fact, as you can imagine, this can be continued like level after level, so long as you take care of this code carefully, right? Now remember to use this if else if structure, right? Otherwise this will go wrong, as I've shown you previously, right? So be careful on this, but beyond this, it is really your imagination, what you want to do with your sprite, right? You can add multiple colors to this, so you can have conditions. For example, like I said, red could be like a danger zone, green could be a good zone, right? Black could be an obstacle, and so on. So there's like endless amount of possibilities that you have. Once you do this arena, then we'll be set to give the other movements to our sprite, which is namely jumping, the gravity effect, and so on and so forth. And we can make a very lively platformer game, and we can keep extending it by adding more and more levels to it, right? So I hope this became clear that using my blocks facilitated all of this. Otherwise, we have to do this. We have to keep drawing this rectangle very carefully, and it's going to be very error prone. It's going to be very painful. But with my blocks, it has become much easier because basically I've got a block which draws a rectangle for me at a given location, right? And I'm just using that to create my levels as I'm going along, right? So with this, I'm done with this video. I hope you liked it. I hope you found it useful. We will come back with another video where we will complete this game by giving realistic motion to our player sprite. All right, take care. Bye bye. Thank you so much.